I still remember the mundane sounds of office life that fateful Monday, when the dull rhythm of routine was shattered by the arrival of a man who would alter the course of my existence. My name is Lucinda Wraitherly, and in the stillness of that day, as I sat behind a desk littered with memos and paperwork, I first saw Will Tapper. He was unlike any man I had ever known, a figure exuding effortless charm and a dangerous allure that pulled at something deep within me. Will moved through the office with a magnetism that defied explanation. His dark eyes and roguish smile hinted at secrets and pleasures reserved for those daring enough to dream big dreams. Despite the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead, in that moment, the world seemed to narrowly focus to a single desire, the shimmering promise of an unattainable destiny. I was immediately captivated by him and taken in. Every casual conversation among my colleagues, every whispered comment about his conquests only deepened my conviction. Will was destined to be mine, and mine alone. I spent that day obsessing over him from the shadows of my cubicle, my heart thundering like a lightning. I meticulously noted the way his laughter lit up the room, how his posture exuded confidence, and the slight tilt of his head when he was deep in thought. In these small details, I discovered a language of their own, one that spoke of passion, freedom, and danger. Even as others admired him superficially, I felt that our meeting was fated, a merging of two kindred spirits that had been written in the stars. The whispers of office gossip painted him as a professional womanizer, a man who moved from one admirer to the next without remorse or regret. Yet, I knew there was more to him than these rumors suggested. I scribbled secret notes in a battered journal, chronicling each glance and fleeting moment of our budding love connection. With every written word, I began to construct an intricate tapestry of fate, a destiny that, in my mind, could only be realized if I claimed him as my one true love. Even as daylight faded into the uncertainties of dusk, I vowed silently that no one else would ever share in his manliness and brilliance. But me. The universe had created him to be my one true love. As I left the office that day, the cool evening air carried a foreboding promise. Shadows stretched longingly across the pavement, and in the solitude of my walk home, I could almost hear a commandment in the wind urging me onward. There was an intensity building within me, a slow, inexorable pull that would soon transform my quiet existence into a waking nightmare of passion and peril. I did not yet understand the nature of the dark path that lay ahead, but I knew one thing for certain. Will Tapper was my destiny, my soulmate, and nothing in this world, not even reason, could tear us apart. In the days that followed, I became a silent watcher within Will's orbit, a presence felt only in the subtlest of moments. I learned the subtleties of his life, the timing of his coffee breaks, the way he casually joked during board meetings, and the fleeting glances he shared with his numerous female admirers. I was drawn to him with a force that defied logic, as if every small detail of his existence was a magnetic note in a cosmic symphony to which only I could attune my soul. It began innocently enough, a chance meeting by the water cooler, a shared comment about the weather. But each small interaction was soon suffused with an otherworldly significance. I began to see our connection in every common occurrence. A door left ajar, a misplaced file that led me to bump into him in the hallway. In my mind, these coincidences were not random. They were carefully orchestrated signals from the universe, confirming that our lives were inexorably intertwined and we were destined to be together. Yet, as my attraction deepened, so too did the darkness that lurked within me. My thoughts turned relentlessly inward, haunted by visions of a perfect, unyielding union between us, a union that could not be compromised by the frivolous distractions of other encounters. Every smile he shared with another woman was a dagger to my heart. Every friendly word exchanged, a betrayal of our sacred bond I believed we were meant to embrace. I began to record these faithless moments in my journal, the ink capturing the raw emotion of my obsession like a dark sacrament. Late into the nights, when the world was shrouded in silence, I would retreat to the solitude of my modest apartment. There, by the soft glow of a solitary lamp, I would close my eyes and imagine a life where Will and I were inseparable, a life that transcended the petty constraints of mortal existence. In those moments, I was not simply a woman in love. I was the keeper of a cosmic promise, the last barrier between a doomed fate and an eternal union. The whispers of my inner demons grew louder, each urging me to seize what I believed was rightfully mine. I began to notice subtle changes in myself, a growing impatience with the mundane, an almost supernatural sensitivity to every shift in Will's demeanor. I would catch my reflection in darkened windows, eyes gleaming with a fevered light, and wonder if I had begun to lose the very essence of who I was. Yet, even as doubt crept in, I clung to the conviction that my love was not a mere human emotion, but a force that transcended the ordinary. In that certainty, I found both solace and despair, a double-edged sword that sharpened my determination while driving me further into isolation. As my inner world darkened, the line between dreams and nightmare began to blur. I found myself caught in a relentless loop of obsessive fantasies and bitter disappointments, each day more surreal than the last. Every smile from Will, every casual touch from his wandering hand, was a silent indictment of a love that was slipping away from me. And yet, in that despair, I could feel a terrible, awe-inspiring power stirring within, a promise of vile action that lay hidden in the depths of my being. With the encroaching winter came a deeper darkness, a chill that seeped not only into the bones, but also into the heart. The nights grew long and oppressive, as if the very air was laden with a malevolent force. In this endless silence, my mind began to unravel, the fragile threads of sanity snapping under the weight of my obsession. I became a wanderer in the corridors of my own thoughts, haunted by vivid dreams and nightmarish visions that blurred the line between sane and insane. Every night I would lie awake, tormented by images of Will entangled with other women, each betrayal a stab in the heart of our budding relationship. I could no longer trust my own perceptions. Reality became a shifting mirage, where every sound, every shadow, foretold of secrets of unfaithfulness. In the solitude of my apartment, I would pace the creaking wooden floors, crying pleas to a force I barely understood, a force that promised retribution for every slight and every unfaithful stolen glance. One particularly starless night, as a storm raged outside and the wind howled like a chorus of doomed souls, I experienced a vision so vivid it shook me to my core. I saw Will standing at the edge of a dark precipice, his eyes wide with terror as he reached out for something just beyond his grasp. But the vision quickly shifted. In its place, I saw myself, a ghostly figure with eyes burning like embers, reaching out to pull him into an abyss from which there was no return. The imagery was as horrifying as it was compelling, an impending sign of the consuming nature of my unquenchable desire. I began to record these experiences in frantic detail, each entry in my journal a descent deeper into the madness that threatened to consume me. I scrawled frenzied passages about the inevitability of our union and the cosmic forces that, I believed, had commanded us to be together. The pages became stained with the ink of obsession and tears of despair, a clear indication to the unraveling of my mind. And yet, within that chaos, I clung to the belief that my actions were justified, that the universe had chosen me to safeguard a sacred truth and a shared love. My overwhelming fixation with Will transformed into something monstrous. I no longer felt content to simply observe him. I needed to be a part of every facet of his life. I began to follow him at night, my footsteps silent on rain-soaked streets, my eyes fixed on the flickering lights of his apartment building. Each time I caught a glimpse of his silhouette against the dim glow of street lamps, I felt a surge of both terror and breathtaking ecstasy, a confirmation that the fate I envisioned was now within my grasp. The thrill of the chase merged with a deep, unyielding dread, as if every moment brought me closer to a void from which there was no return. In the throes of this all-consuming obsession, I discovered that my emotions were no longer governed by human frailty. Instead, a darker, almost supernatural determination began to take root within me, a relentless drive that told of promises of complete power and ultimate control. I started to dream not just of love, but of a vile cosmic justice that would punish every transgression against the sanctity of our union. Each hallucination, each fevered vision was a reminder that I was destined for something beyond the limitations of mundane mortal existence. Yet, even as I sank further into this abyss, I found fleeting moments of lucidity, a brief, almost painful clarity where I questioned whether I was losing myself entirely. The mirror, reflecting a face both familiar and strange, became a grim reminder of the fragile boundary between love and madness. In those moments, I would stare into my own eyes, searching for a spark of the woman I once was, only to be met with the cold, unyielding intensity of an entity consumed by its own dark prophecy. Inevitably, the collision of my inner world with the cold reality of Will's indifference could no longer be delayed. It was on a night when the wind screamed through deserted pathways and the rain battered the pavement with relentless fury that I resolved to confront him, a meeting that would change everything. Every step I took towards the office building that evening was weighted with a sense of fatal inevitability. I was no longer the intent observer in the shadows. I was a force driven by an obsession that forced me forward without mortal constraints. Inside the nearly empty building, the dim light of emergency exit signs cast long, eerie shadows along the walls. I found Will in one of the deserted hallways, his features illuminated briefly by the flash of lightning through an office window. His expression was one of startled confusion, his eyes widening as they met mine. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as the world around us faded into a muted background of sound and shadow. "Will," I breathed, my voice trembling with an intensity that bordered on the otherworldly. "You belong to me. No one, absolutely no one, can ever have you. But me." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush, imbued with both tenderness and an undeniable undercurrent of menace. He attempted to step back, his face contorting with shock and a hint of fear. In that moment, all the pain of every perceived betrayal, the stolen smiles, the fleeting touches, the whispered promises shared with others, erupted into a fevered force within me. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tumult in my soul, as if nature itself was bearing witness to this fateful encounter. I advanced towards him with a measured determination. My hands, though trembling, reached out as if guided by an invisible force, and I grasped his collar in an effort to bind him to his destiny. In that charged instant, our eyes locked, his wide with apprehension, mine burning with a fervor that was terrifying and unyielding. I could see in the brief reflection of his gaze the realization that he had unknowingly been drugged into a nightmare from which there might be no escape. For a long, agonizing minute, the world narrowed to that single, shared breath of terror and desperate longing. I whispered promises of eternal devotion, pledges of a love that would transcend time, even as my heart pounded with a blend of triumph and longing. Every compassionate word was a promise of the cosmic justice that I believed I must embrace, a justice that would punish every fleeting disloyalty and cement our union once and for all, for eternity. The confrontation escalated as his protests grew more desperate, and my grip tightened, not in cruel malice, but in a manic, unwavering need to control our fate. I recall the cold shock of his pulse against my palm, the faint metallic tang of blood that signified the first breach of the barrier between my fantasies and the real world. Yet, even as a part of me recoiled at the fiacal cost of my actions, another part surged forward, convinced that this sacrifice was necessary to honor the eternal bond that we were sworn to uphold. In that perilous moment, the boundaries between love and violence, passion and terror, became impossibly blurred. I was a desperate lover, and the inexorable arbiter of fate, driven by a force that seemed to emanate from the very core of my being. I could almost hear the mutter of ancient rituals, the chants of a forgotten civilization that demanded absolute fidelity, that prescribed any hint of betrayal with an unyielding severity of action. It was as if every fiber of my being had been reawakened to a higher, darker, immoral purpose. When at last I released him, stepping back into the cold, indifferent darkness of the hall, the reality of what had transpired began to settle in. Will stood there, visibly shaken, his eyes searching mine for answers I could not provide. I felt an overwhelming mixture of resolution and horror, triumph that I had taken a stand for what I believed to be our beloved, destined union, and horror at the irrevocable crossing of a line between passion and madness. I left him there in that limited space, a man caught between fear and disbelief, as I slipped back into the night. The storm had begun to subside, but inside me, the raging tempest of obsession was only just beginning to take shape. I knew, with a dreaded certainty, that there was no turning back from the path I had chosen. The echoes of that confrontation would haunt both our lives forever. In the wake of that fateful night, as I retreated into the solitude of my silent apartment, the fragmented pieces of my memory began to coalesce into a terrifying revelation. I sat in the silence, surrounded by scattered pages of frantic writings and blurred recollections, when the truth, long hidden beneath layers of suppressed memory, slowly emerged from the shadows of my mind. I was not, as I had always assumed, merely a tormented human soul driven by an obsessive love. Deep within the recesses of my mind lay memories of a life that spanned galaxies, a life on a distant, alien world where the laws of love were both unyielding and sacred. I remembered a realm bathed in the light of unfamiliar stars, where the union of soulmates was not merely a fleeting desire, but a covenant written into the very fabric of existence. In that world, fidelity was not a choice. It was an immutable law, and any betrayal was met with a punishment so severe it defied human comprehension. As the fragments of my past reassembled themselves, I recalled the solemn ceremonies of my people, a ritual of union that was celebrated with awe and trepidation. In that ancient tradition, two souls found to be destined for each other were bound together for eternity. Any deviation from that sacred bond was seen as a transgression against the cosmic order, a sin that invited an unimaginable end. I began to see that my obsessive need to possess Will Tapper was not a mere byproduct of mortal passion. It was, in fact, the manifestation of an ancient mandate that had been etched into my very being since the beginning of time. The recollections were vivid and overwhelming. I saw visions of ritualistic gatherings beneath alien skies, of luminous landscapes where every star seemed to pulse with the promise of eternal fidelity. I remembered the solemn words of my elders, words that warned that infidelity was not just a betrayal of love, but a defilement of the sacred covenant between soulmates. In that distant land, a single act of betrayal would invoke a punishment so harrowing that it would bring swift and unyielding demise. I realized, with a mix of terror and awe, that the dark power which had surged within me during my confrontation with Will was no ordinary emotion. It was the birth of a cosmic legacy, a legacy that had been entrusted to me, binding me to a destiny far greater than any mortal love could ever comprehend. I was not just Lucinda Wraitherly, a woman whose heart had been shattered by unrequited love. I was an emissary of an alien civilization, a guardian of a covenant that demanded absolute fidelity and eternal union. In that moment of revelation, every act of betrayal that I had perceived in Will's casual flirtations took on a new, unholy significance. His wandering affections, which I had once seen as mere human weakness, now appeared as a sacrilege against a law that transcended the boundaries of earthly morality. I understood that my mission was not merely to claim him for myself, but to enforce a cosmic decree, one that demanded that our bond be unbreakable, inviolate, and eternal. The weight of this realization was exhilarating and horrifying. I spent long hours in reflection, questioning the very nature of my existence. Was I a monster driven to madness by love, or was I a chosen instrument of a higher order, compelled to enforce a truth that few could ever comprehend? The duality of my nature, torn between human fragility and an otherworldly destiny, haunted my every waking moment. I found myself standing at the crossroads of two realities. One, a life steeped in the familiar sorrows of human longing. The other, a realm of cosmic duty where the laws of love were absolute. In the quiet solitude of my room, I began to sense a new understanding of my purpose. I resolved that I would no longer allow the trivialities of mortal passion to distract me from the larger cosmic design. Will Tapper, with his seemingly careless indulgences, had become the focal point of my destiny, a symbol of a love that was meant to be eternal. My actions, as violent and desperate as they had been, were not the ramblings of a mind unhinged, but the necessary steps to restore balance to a universe that had long since forgotten the true meaning of loyalty, love, and morality. I knew that if Will were ever to stray again, even the faintest hint of disloyalty, it would trigger consequences that extended beyond the confines of this mortal world. In my heart, I harbored the grim certainty that my alien heritage demanded retribution, a punishment that was as swift as it was merciless. The visions of my distant home, a place of star-dusted landscapes and ancient rituals, served as a constant reminder that my path was preordained. I was no mere woman consumed by passion. I was the living embodiment of an eternal covenant, a guardian tasked with protecting a sacred holy union against all forms of betrayal. Now, I feel the quiet pull of that alien legacy coursing through my veins. I stare into the mirror and see not just the haunted eyes of a woman ravaged by obsessive love, but the fierce determination of one who has accepted a burden beyond measure. I am the keeper of an unbreakable bond, a symbol of a love that transcends time, space, and human frailty. My every heartbeat, every breath, is a witness to a cosmic law that does not tolerate infidelity, that enforces eternal unity with an uncompromising severity. The journey that has led me to this moment has been fraught with pain, terror, and the slow disillusionment of a once rational mind. Yet, within that horror, there is a perverse beauty, a dark, twisted elegance in the idea that love, in its purest form, is both a blessing and a curse. I now embrace the duality of my nature, the harmonious discord of human emotion and extraterrestrial destiny. I accept that my love for Will is both my salvation and my damnation, a force that will bind us together against the ravages of time and space. In the final quiet moments of this night, I resolve to carry forth the mission entrusted to me. I will be ever vigilant, a watchful guardian over a love that is as eternal as the stars themselves. And if the fates should conspire to test our union once more, I will not hesitate to unleash the full measure of the ancient power that courses within me, a power forged in the crucible of alien tradition and tempered by the raw, unyielding emotions of human desire. I am Lucinda Wraitherly, a woman reborn from the ashes of mortal obsession, an emissary of a cosmic covenant, and a guardian of a love that defies the very fabric of earthly reality. In the silence of the night, as the last remnants of the storm fade away, I stand ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. For in this dark and twisted universe, one truth remains immutable: that love, in its most absolute form, is both the light that guides us to bliss and the darkness that consumes us forever.